My name is Federica Zanetti and I'm from the University of Bologna. Today I would like to reflect on arts-based methodologies for gender inclusivity in STEM teaching, starting from a concrete example, the book and the theater performance Girls Will Save the World. Le ragazze salveranno il mondo by Annalisa Corrado and Monica Morini. This example is not simply inspirational, it allows us to explore how artistic practices can function as pedagogical tools within STEM education, and more importantly, how they can operate as critical instruments for addressing gender inequality. The inclusion of the A in STEM is often justified in methodological terms. Arts are said to enhance creativity, engagement, and interdisciplinary thinking. They are presented as bridges that make scientific disciplines more accessible and more attractive, especially to underrepresented groups. However, the example of Girls Will Save the World as a book by Annalisa Corrado and as a theater performance by Annalisa Corrado and Monica Morini invites us to go further. It shows that arts-based methodologies are not only about engagement, they are about transforming the cultural narratives. The performance Girls Will Save the World does not simply present female role models. It constructs a narrative space in which scientific knowledge, ethical responsibility, and civic participation are interconnected. This is crucial. In many educational contexts, effort toward gender inclusivity focus on representation, increasing the visibility of women in science. While this is important, representation alone does not dismantle the deeper narratives that associate scientific authority with masculinity, neutrality, and detachment. Art-based methodologies intervene precisely at the level of narrative. Through storytelling, embodiment, and performance, they make visible the cultural and symbolic dimensions of scientific knowledge. They reveal how imaginaries are formed and how they can be reshaped. In this sense, theater becomes a pedagogical device capable of addressing not only cognition, but also identification and imagination. Using this example, we can identify two interconnected levels at which the arts operate in STEM teaching. The first level is methodological. Arts foster active learning, emotional engagement, and interdisciplinary thinking. They create spaces where complexity and ethical dilemmas can be explored. The second level is structural and critical. Arts are themselves fields shaped by power relations and gender hierarchies. Therefore, integrating arts into STEM does not automatically guarantee inclusivity. If we are not attentive, STEM can become merely aesthetic, enriching STEM with creativity without questioning its underlying assumptions. The strength of Girls Will Save the World lies in the fact that it does not treat the arts as decoration. It uses them to question who produces knowledge, who speaks in public space, and whose voices are legitimized. Let us consider now some of the figures presented in the book and performance. Rachel Carson, a marine biologist, demonstrated that scientific research can become an instrument of collective responsibility. Her work made clear that technological progress, when disconnected from ethical reflection, can have devastating environmental consequences. Wangari Maathai connected environmental science with social and political engagement. By linking ecological sustainability with the women's empowerment, she reframed science as a tool for justice. Jane Fonda shows how communication, artistic visibility, and public presence can amplify scientific knowledge, making climate issues accessible and urgent. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez illustrates that the relationship between scientific expertise and political decision-making. Bringing scientific knowledge into policy spaces transforms it into structural change. And Greta Thunberg, although not a scientist, demonstrates how scientific literacy can fuel civic mobilization. Her use of data and scientific evidence remind us that STEAM competencies are not confined to laboratories. They are instruments of democratic participation. These examples are not presented as isolated success stories. They illustrate how women's presence in STEAM fields often shift priorities toward ethics, sustainability, and collective futures. Art-based methodology also allow us to make absence visible. Theater, storytelling, and narrative reconstruction can highlight how scientific curricula have historically marginalized women's contribution. They reveal that exclusion is not accidental, but systemic. For teacher training, this has direct implications. It means moving behind simply adding female figures to lesson plans. It involves critically examining how scientific authority is constructed and how educational practices may unconsciously reproduce gender stereotypes. Arts provide tools to surface these hidden structures. Another crucial aspect concerns the idea of neutrality. Technologies and scientific data are often presented as objective and value-free. Yet research in science and technology studies has shown that design choices reflect cultural assumptions and social priorities. Art-based methodologies can open space for critical questioning. Who is included in datasets and who is excluded? Who benefits from technological innovation? How do language and metaphors shape scientific understanding? By incorporating these questions into STEM teaching, educators foster not only technical competence, but also ethical awareness. For those engaged in teacher education, the implications are clear. Art-based methodologies for gender inclusivity in STEM teaching require attention to narrative and representation, critical reflection on curricula and knowledge processes, integration of ethical and social dimensions, into scientific learning, pedagogical practices that value questioning as much as problem solving. The example of Girls Will Save the World demonstrates that artistic practices can operate as mediators between science and society. They help future educators understand that inclusivity is not only about access, but about transforming the cultural meaning of science. To conclude, I would like to bring back into the discussion the narrative voice of the book itself, because it shows how storytelling becomes a pedagogical act. To conclude, integrating arts into STEM is not sufficient in itself. What matters is how we integrate them. If arts are used merely to increase engagement, their transformative potential remains limited. But if they are used to interrogate power structures, reshape narratives, and expand imaginaries, they become a powerful tool for gender inclusivity. The example of Girls Will Save the World shows that art-based methodologies can contribute to redefining who belongs in STEM and how scientific gender knowledge relates to society. For teacher-educator, the challenge is to move from inclusion as a representation to inclusion as structural and epistemic transformation. Only then can STEAM function not simply as an acronym, but as a framework for a more equal, just, and responsible educational practice.